or whatever, but I'm going to share today very specifically my experience, and it's going to be my story. Now this photograph very specifically is taken at my ordination of my diaconate in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and it was a privileged moment. But right at this moment, everyone who saw this photograph, and it was captured, it was put on the seminary notice boards, and every time, even sometimes when they have ordination photos of our college back in Rome, they put up this because they're saying, we've never captured someone with such a smile at an ordination ceremony. And so, this smile of mine, the joy of mine that I said my yes to, has a story. And I'm going to just recall that story of mine to you all to know how God is, how real He is, and why I'm standing here, because I've come to understand. And what I'm sharing with you, what I shared with you in the past, in the last session, what I'm going to be sharing with you the next of today and tomorrow, is going to be my experience mainly. It's not about what I believe in and just think, okay, that's some theory. But I'm going to share with you what I experienced, what I truly believe in, that I made my own. And that's what I'm going to share with you now. So, as I went through life, just to give you a little background, some of you already know that I'm a Malayali and I'm supposed to have been in Kerala, which I never was. I was born and brought up in a town called Ooty, back in India. And all my schooling and everything I did there. And I was born and brought up in a very traditional Catholic family. For those of you who are more attuned to the different rites, I'm from a Syro-Malabar Catholic rite, so I'm not like really the Latin Rite Catholic. So we come from a very traditional background. My mom was very, very keen that we needed to practice the faith. Every holiday we had to go for daily mass, and we were forced into it. And I'm sure many of you, being born into a beautiful Catholic family, you may be practicing your faith because your mom or your dad wants you to do it. You may be going to church, maybe even part of this prayer group because your mom and dad wants you to be part of it. And that's so with many of our Catholic families. But because I knew my mom, I couldn't disobey her. I wanted to please her in some way because she sacrificed her life for me. So in some way I said, okay, I'm going to obey her and I'm going to do what she tells me to do. But as I went through life and I started going to church, you know what? I come from a very small family of only 10 children. And I'm the youngest. Okay, so you can imagine how life would have been. Petted, pampered, right through. So as mom would insist that we go for mass every Sunday, we would choose to go for the morning mass and English mass. And my mom would go for a Malayalam mass in a different church. And we would go there. We know exactly which priest will give a homily for how long. So we would be very outstanding Catholics. We would go like after the first reading or second reading is over. We won't get placed inside church, so we will be very outstanding. And then at the right time when the homily starts, we will all slip out slowly. We go to a chai shop close by, have a nice chai, and then come back knowing exactly which priest, whether he'll take a homily for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And we come back right in time for the rest of the mass. And then after mass was over, we would go back home and everyone would be happy. My mom was happy because what? We fulfilled a Sunday obligation. And many of us sometimes will be doing that just to fulfill that Sunday obligation, thinking it's important to go on Sunday for mass or on Friday for mass over here to fulfill that obligation of the week, because if you don't go, then we are sinning. Then I have to go for confession. How many of you are brought up that way? Okay, good. And most of us do that, and I was in that too. So my faith was not about what I believed in, but what my mom or dad told me about, and I practiced it because they told me to do this. Thankfully, a little later, there was a charismatic prayer group that started. And so my mom became part of that charismatic group, and she would take all of us for that prayer meeting. And we had our meetings on Fridays, and all of us would troop together, go for that Friday prayer meeting. And so I came into an experience of Jesus, came to know Jesus also in a personal way to a great extent, right then when I was a very small kid. And I was about 10 or 12 at that time. Then then as time passed by, there was a big gap between me and my sister. My brother was senior to me, and they all passed off, and there were no universities or colleges in that town, so everyone had to move off to a different city to get their education after that, and I was like the only one there. And I started like saying, oh, now I'm not under the protective care of my older brother, older sister, who's always watching over me. And I said, I want to make a life of my own. But all said and done, because I was so protective at home, I was very shy, I was very timid. I could never stand in front of a group like this and talk. Even if I had few friends, I would be the silent one. If I was in class and the teacher tried to look and ask a doubt about someone, you could see me ducking slowly behind someone, not wanting to be called out. And that was me. I was very shy. I had a great inferiority complex when I went outside home. But as long as I was with my brothers and sisters, because all of them were so protective of me, I was like at home there. But then as soon as everyone left and I had to make a life for myself, I said, now let me explore, let me experience life. And that's when I am going away and the fiery furnaces of life started invading me. So what happens when you go and you start having a lot of your friends and you start experiencing the world? The first thing that you want to explore is maybe pornography. Then you want to explore, go into relationships. Then you want to explore and try drinking, smoking. Thankfully, I didn't touch drugs. And so I started exploring all this, and my life was really going away from the Lord. But no one knew about it, because I had a group of friends now who were just leading me that way, and I was getting into relationships and all that stuff, and it was taking me away. And I was getting more and more into it, because once you open a door to sin and to the pleasures of life, you get sucked in more and more. And some of us may be having that side of life. And the thing is that all said and done, after all this was happening, no one would know. None of my parents, none of my brothers or sisters. And they all thought I was still that young little boy, the little baby brother of theirs. And I was very good, I was very holy, and I would go for mass and I would go for prayer meeting, and that's how life would be. So I finished my schooling, and thankfully I moved to Chennai, which is a major city. I got admission into Loyola College, which is one of the best colleges in India. And I got into a fast life. Because now I moved from a small town, I moved into a big university, a big city. And who were my friends? Some of them were part of rock bands. Some of them were totally into hip-hop and a lot of that stuff. And every weekend we would hang out. At that time, we didn't have many places to hang out, like shopping malls and things like that. But we would go to the discos every Saturday and Sunday evening. And at the same time, you know what? I had two of my brothers in the same city. And my oldest brother was part of a charismatic prayer group. And because my brother was there, I had no choice of going to the hostel or whatever and staying in the hostel, but I had to stay with my brother. And my brother continued that piety and his walk with the Lord. And he was part of a charismatic prayer group, which is one of the most active prayer groups in that city. And as soon as I went, the first thing that he did was he took me to the prayer group leader's house and introduced me to them. And I realized that every evening he would go hang out there. And he would go for daily mass. So the second day that I was staying with him, he asked me, aren't you getting up and coming for mass? And he's my older brother, the oldest of the lot. And I didn't want to say no. So I wanted to please him. I thought, okay, if I don't go, maybe he wouldn't like it. So I told about how we live based on what other people think about me. So in order to please him, I started going for daily mass. And now here am I'm part of this charismatic prayer group, and there's a lot of youth in that prayer group. So we used to hang out in this prayer group leader's house every evening. And then I started going for daily mass. As part of this youth group, we got into ministry. So I was part of an intercession team, which we would meet every Wednesday, pray together, pray for the needs of everyone. We started reaching out to the people around that place, and we would go and visit old people who could not maybe do their own work, who wouldn't be able to do their shopping. We would help some of them out. And then there was a Missionaries of Charity home, which is close by. On Sundays, they were run by brothers, not by the sisters. We would go there and help them out and do the cleaning of the destitute and things like that. And it was a very noble thing to do. as I had all this going through in life, I was part of Loyola College. So I needed to be the hip guy, I needed to be cool, I needed to be trendy, and if I needed to be a good guy in college, what I needed to do, I needed to speak the language and do the things that my friends did. So as I said, I used to go to the discos. But the most important thing was that every word, every sentence that I used, if I didn't have an F or a B in it, it didn't make cool time. You were not like in trend with the guys in college. So I could so easily know how to put my step into one boat of being with the prayer group, being this holy guy, going for daily mass, and then going to help out with the missionaries of charity. And then I would be this other guy here in the prayer group, in college, speaking F's and B's in every sentence, hanging out, trying to like find relationships, hang out in the wrong places, comment about all the girls passing by and things like that. And this was my life. And the funniest thing was, there was some aunties who come to church who love you because you're part of a charismatic prayer group. You know, they would see me in the prayer meeting, they would see me at church, they would see me at an intercession, and they would say, wow, look at this boy, how holy he is. And truly, none of them knew the other side of my life. And all of them in the prayer group didn't have any knowledge about what I was doing in college with my friends who were druggies, who were part of these rock bands and stuff like that. And that was me. And many of us sometimes, we live our life. I told you our identity is to live based on what other people think about me. And so I so easily fit in, and I love to just govern my life based on what other people think I should do. And this was me. For 3 years, I was doing my bachelor's in economics at that time. And for 3 years, I was part of this prayer group, charismatic, holy, praising, raising my hands, saying praises to God as I'm there on that Friday prayer meeting. And next day, I'm there maybe at the discos, having fun with my friends the next evening. And invariably, many of us are in that world. And today, we're still. That time when we were talking about pornography and stuff like that, we only had to buy books. Secretly, someone will give us a DVD and then we'll pass it around for no one to know and things like that. Or we will have older still video cassettes. Okay, I'm quite old, not at your age. But today, you have everything on your phone. And who knows it? No one. And you're the only one sometimes who's deep into that sin, in that muck, in that shit literally, and you're suffering. But you don't know what to do. And yet you may be coming to the prayer meeting, and when Betsy leads praise and worship so beautifully, you're opening your hand and saying, Lord, take my life, I offer my life to you. And we can live in that falseness of life very often. And I was living in that. And now it came to a point that I said, okay, what do I want to do? Because I want to identify with what I have, what people say about me, and then with what I'm going to be doing. Because that will make me who I am for the future. So I had a clear aim for the future. I wanted to do my MBA in order to become a managing director or a CEO of a multinational company. And I was so focused with my aim. And I knew if I get there with a good MBA, I'll walk up the corporate ladder, I will be in a very good job, I'll earn a lot of money. If I earn a lot of money, I'll have a lot of comforts, and at some time I'll find a beautiful wife and life will be beautiful. This was my philosophy of life. For many of us, I think we have a similar philosophy. And we want to be there. We want to achieve, we want to have money, we want to have the comfort, we want to have the material things of life. And then maybe we want that special person in my life too, and I think, wow, as we see in the movies, everything will be beautiful, I'll be dancing around the trees and everything and be good. Now that's what we think life will be. So, at the end of my graduation of my economics, I said, okay, I'm going to prepare hard now, and I'm not going to, because if I need to get there to the top of the corporate ladder, I need to do an MBA at a top institute. Only then I'll get a job even before I could finish, and I'll start that journey in the corporate world. So I applied at the top institutes like the IIMs and the XLRIs and all that, and I didn't prepare much. I applied because I played the fool, still continued my life with freaking out every weekend, and then with all the charismatic activities. I didn't really concentrate to study, because that's where, again, we play with God. All through my graduation, every exam that I did, I would not prepare and not really study hard, but I would come to the day of the exam, and the previous day I'll go to my charismatic leader and say, pray over me, tomorrow I have an exam so that I'll be inspired and I'll do well. Never prepared. I wouldn't even study hard. Last minute I would study and then do something or the other, and I've just scraped through almost all my exams, and that's how I finished my graduation. But now if I had to do an MBA in one of the top institutes, I had to prepare really hard. So I enrolled into one of these institutes, these private institutes that does training and prepares you with all the material. I really didn't care much about that. I went and attempted all my entrance exams in these top institutes, and I thought God is going to help me because I'm in this charismatic group. No, I go there for prayer meeting every Friday. I'm serving at the missionaries of charity. I go for daily mass. So I started offering the mass for that intention. I knew God is going to miraculously help me. And that's how we are. We do all the mischief, we don't do what we're supposed to do, and then we think God is going to help us. And this is the reality of life again. And to cut the long story short, I didn't get any call or didn't even get through even the entrance exam in any of these entrance tests. And then it struck me. For the first time in life, I was like in the crossroads of life, not knowing what to do next. Because I had an aim, I wanted to do my MBA, wanted to become a CEO or managing director, but now I failed because I didn't get through an MBA anywhere. It's too late now to apply into any of the other institutes either. So then I thought, okay, I'll get into a job. By then I was getting into a relationship too, so I didn't want to leave Chennai, go to another place or anything. And I said, okay, let me now forget that big aim that I had. Let me just apply for a job or whatever. Didn't succeed. That's where we really need to be thankful for our parents. Even though my mom was such a pain and constantly kept nudging me and telling me things, she kept telling me, now forget it. If you have not got through your admission, just leave everything, come back to UT, take 1 year off, study hard, prepare well, and attempt for your entrance exams next year. Because she knew that I was actually aiming for something very good. But I didn't want to because I had those attachments already. One, a relationship that was happening. The other, a fast life, so many friends. I couldn't think of going back to this dead little town where there's no life after 6:30 p.m. So I didn't want to do that. But then I tried a job, I tried many other things, nothing worked. And then I decided, let me be obedient, go back to what my mom said. Packed my bags, went back to my hometown. Because of the charismatic renewal, many retreats that we go for, one thing that we're drilled into is about our time of personal prayer. Thanks be to God, something that I developed as a habit was every day before I could go to bed, just before my bed, I will sit down, I will kneel down, and I'll say a prayer, thanking God for everything that He did and surrendering my life for the next day to the Lord. And so when I went back home, and the first night, I went down on my knees praying. And as a flashback, like John led you to write a whole history about your life in the past, as a flashback, everything that happened in my life in the last 3 years, and the relationships that I had, the things that I was doing, the wrong thing that I was getting into, plus the prayer group and the beautiful things that are happening with the youth, the outreaches that we are doing, and everything just kept coming as a flashback. And then I realized what a fool I'm making of my life. I came to know Jesus, I came to experience His love, I was told so much about it, and I had such happiness in doing what I was doing with the missionaries of charity and the intercession in the ministry, but yet the world was pulling me and I was following this way, and I knew what I had to do next. So I went down on my knees, literally like this. I raised up my hands to heaven and I said this prayer, Lord, I want to stop playing games with you. I want you to take control of my life. But when I said this prayer, I said it with all sincerity and I cried out from my heart. I literally wanted the Lord to take control. Till then, I governed my life. And I said to the Lord, Lord, take control. I remember the date. It was May 13th, 1998. And from then on, things changed. Things changed that I suddenly got such a courage, such a strength. I told you I was a very inferiority complex guy. I started stepping out and doing a lot of things myself. But then I was preparing for my MBA. So for the first time in history, I sat down and wrote down a timetable that I would follow myself without anyone coaxing me to do it. And I sat for the next 6 months. I put in 600 hours of study, but starting my day with Mass. And then now, I wanted to go for Mass. I started experiencing Mass in a different way. I started really realizing, oh my God, what is this? It's a great mystery that we're celebrating, where God comes to nourish us with His body and blood. I'll talk to you more about that in the Mass today. And everything that I started doing, which I was doing for the sake of doing it, started having a lot of meaning. And I just saw life, I saw a joy. And what happened that night was not a thunder or lightning or something that came and God spoke to me from the heavens like in that cloud at the baptism. But it was something deep inside that just changed. I experienced a freedom. I experienced a joy. I experienced a peace and a feeling that I can't describe in words, that I encountered God, and I knew because I opened my heart to Him. And I said, God, take control. What happened after that is so much that I can share. And I'm not going to share so much, but just a few incidents for you to realize what an awesome God we have. From then on, as I said, I got into one of the top institutes. I started my MBA. In that MBA program, I started off a prayer group there. I grew in leadership in the Charismatic Renewal. I started a whole youth renewal for the city of Chennai. I got into the national team. In a few years, I was the leader of the National Catholic Charismatic Renewal Youth Services, which is the youth wing of the whole national team for the whole of India. And I was traveling places, talking to people about the Lord. And from that moment when I encountered the Lord, the next day onwards, I had a joy and I wanted to share what I experienced with people around. To give you an experience, so that as soon as I joined for my MBA, this is an MBA program. There's a saying that when you're in the top institutes, that you will have to get up before you could sleep, because there are so many assignments. There's a trimester system, there's internal assessment. Every day literally you have to do something. But yet I was very keen that I wanted to start a prayer group in that institute. I started a prayer group. A lot of my friends started coming in, some of them even Hindus. And today one of my classmates, who's a brilliant guy, who's one of the toppers in our MBA program, he's a senior guy and senior development analyst with a software company, one of the leading software companies, and he's in the US now. He was a hardcore Hindu Brahmin, but today he's my godchild. He converted, having an experience in that group that we started. And so there was so much, and I saw God just working in such beautiful ways. Then came to the end of that MBA program. I landed up in a big job even before the program could get over. And I started with a software company, started earning a lot of money at that time, moved on to a multinational life insurance company, so moved into a better job, moved on after that into a dream job for the British Embassy. And I was traveling places. I was working with the British Council in charge of projects for the whole of South India. And it was a job where you as a manager, you had a team under you. I was traveling to places all over the South, going for meetings all over India to different cities, traveling abroad for meetings, and staying in 5-star hotels, dealing with diplomats and senior officials. And you know how old I was? 25, 26. And I got there. And I knew now I'm getting into that corporate ladder, earning a lot of money. But then there was a difference. I had the love of the Lord so much, and I told you by that time I became the leader of the charismatic renewal. I'm the youngest child of the family, but what started happening in the family was they all saw the change that is in me. They saw the Lord working in my life so beautifully that everyone got married and went off and have their own families. But every time they had something a struggle or difficulty that they're going through, invariably, even though being the youngest, they would call me, they would ask me for prayer, they would ask me to pray for them. God was doing something marvelous. And I'm just sharing little tidbits. There's so many experiences that I can share of how God started working in a powerful way. I told you how God just transformed me from within. When I was doing my MBA, in the second year I became the leader of the Students' Union. I told you that shy guy who I was, who didn't even want to talk to people, who would shy away even in class. I started volunteering, taking up activities, and I had a faith in me that nothing is impossible. If I had God with me, I could just take up anything. He would give me the wisdom, He would give me the strength and the grace to do things. And I saw that happening in my life. And so, what I started experiencing in that discovery of God, in that experience that I had on that 13th of May 1998, was a great experience of His love, His joy, His peace, and a passion to share Him with others. And a great change that happened was a metanoia, a change of heart, a transformation of mind. And I started looking at life itself very, very differently. And there was this scripture that touched me. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and everything else will be added unto you. And as I said, I had this passion to share Jesus. Every opportunity that I had, I would talk about Jesus, I would talk about my experience, and I would want them to come to that encounter of the Lord. And I saw God blessing me in every area. And then I asked the Lord, how do I respond now? I want to walk with you every day. I want to experience this experience that I'm having. And then I began a journey of prayer and listening to the Lord of everything that I needed to do every day. I was earning a lot of money, as I told you. I was traveling places, but it came to a point that I knew that everything that I received was a blessing from God. Even the salary that I earned. So even at that time, I would spend a lot of money for many of these events that we conducted. I would give a lot of charity. But even to buy something for myself, if I needed to buy a new trouser, I needed to buy a new shirt, I would ask the Lord whether I needed to do it. I didn't take it for granted. And that was how accountable I was to the Lord. And I wanted the Lord to lead me in every step. And then I started asking the Lord every day, what next, Lord? Seeking God's will for my future. And that's what I came to, that nothing else mattered. And now I didn't want to become that CEO or managing director, but I only wanted to do God's will in every little thing. The smallest thing, like even buying a new trouser, buying something for myself, to the big things that I needed to do every day, to the meetings that I had. And in the corporate meetings, I had so many experiences that I would be meeting with very senior people that I was even invited to be a chief guest of a scientific event where I had no background to science, to a scientific event held by a university. Just because of the position that I was in working. And I went there and I spoke, and they were all in awe about what I spoke, with no background of science at all. That's how God works. And so I started seeking God's will. And then through a lot of Ignatian spirituality, the spirituality of the Jesuits, I went for a lot of retreats, started growing in that deep contemplative experience of God. And that simple thing that St. Ignatius talks about is saying, the joy of the Lord will come to you when you abandon yourself to God every day. That means nothing else matters. I just want to be in God's presence. And here my abandoning myself to God. And I would make that prayer like I made in May 13, 1998, every single day to this day, saying, Lord, I want you to take control of my life. The Lord wants our permission. He's given us freedom to make our choice. We can either negate Him or we can open our hearts to Him. And I would consciously make this choice to invite Him to take control of my life every day. And then I knew an important step of life was not to take the natural way of thinking of getting married. All my brothers and sisters were married off, and if you come from a South Indian family, and especially from Kerala, as soon as you're at that marriageable age, there'll be thousands of people looking for a match for you. And I had a big family. So I had uncles, aunties, sisters-in-law, brothers-in-law, and all of them who married in, who started looking out for a match for me. But then I was very free and open to the Lord alone. And I said, I can't take this for granted. I need to ask the Lord. Even in the small decisions about buying a trouser or a shirt, I would ask the Lord whether I could or not. And in this big decision about life, I need to know whether God wants me to take this step. And I knew both were a vocation, whether it's marriage or whether it was consecrated life. And so I began a process of discernment with my spiritual director. And every day I would sense this deep call, more and more of the love of the Lord. And I said, Lord, I want to serve you alone. And what possible way can I serve you the best? And I was very open because I was already traveling so much and doing so much as a lay person. So people would advise me saying, now, oh, see, and there's so many incidents of priests, they will say, oh, lost their lives and oh, this and that and many wrong things about priests do. And they would say, you can do so much more as a lay person, get married and you can still be very active in ministry. But I said I used to travel around a lot. So wherever I went, whichever hotel that I stayed in, the first thing if you ask, where's the nearest Catholic church, the hotel will have information. And I would go to Catholic churches for Mass the first thing in the morning. And many places that I went to, when I went for Mass, I would see this priest celebrating Mass as if it was just another duty that he was doing. Sometimes Mass would finish in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I'd say, if only this priest would know what he's celebrating, he would create such a great influence amongst the whole congregation. And as I said this to myself, there was a nudge in my heart saying, can you step in and make a difference? And so there were many incidents like this again, which I don't want to take time for. But then I went through a decision-making retreat, an Ignatian retreat, in order to finally decide. Now, I had a lot of experience journeying with my spiritual director, and I saw this call deeper and deeper growing in me, but I wanted to be sure. So I went for a decision-making retreat, an Ignatian retreat, and then I made my decision to say yes to the priesthood forever. And as soon as I said that yes, I prostrated in front of that Blessed Sacrament Chapel in that retreat house in Bangalore. And I can still remember a second experience, like the experience that I had on May 13, 1998, when I first said yes to the Lord. Now, the second time again, much more in intensity, a great love just flooding my heart. And I can't express it in words. And I came to that experience of Jesus, of God, and His love for me. And I knew for sure that was God's call. So I said yes to the priesthood, and from then on, it's just been a great journey. I joined a missionary community in Bangalore called the ICP, and then I traveled to different places. I did my formation of philosophy in India. I did my theology in Rome. That's how I got ordained in St. Peter's Basilica, right at that high altar where only the popes celebrate. I couldn't even dream of these things. And in these last few years, it's 5 years now that I've been a priest. I've traveled to so many countries, done missions in different places, met people that I've never ever dreamt of meeting. And yet, I understand that some people who come to me for counseling, some people who come to me just to share and ask things about what they need to do, are senior people. Sometimes I wouldn't even dream that actually they would come to me for something. But I know it is the Lord and the Lord alone, and it's not about me. So right from my experience when I opened my life to the Lord, and all that the Lord did was knowing that it is the Lord alone who can do marvelous things in you and me when I open my life to the Lord.